Welcome back, friends. You are listening to the Juicebox Podcast.
Hi, my name is Melissa. I live in California, and I'm from the East Coast.
Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. AG1 is offering my listeners a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure you check out drinkag1.com/juicebox to get this offer. Check out my algorithm pumping series to help you make sense of automated insulin delivery systems like Omnipod 5, Loop, Medtronic 780G, twiist, Tandem Control IQ, and much more. Each episode will dive into the setup, features, and real-world usage tips that can transform your daily type 1 diabetes management. We cut through the jargon, share personal experiences, and show you how these algorithms can simplify and streamline your care. If you're curious about automated insulin pumping, go find the Algorithm Pumping series in the Juicebox Podcast. Easiest way, juiceboxpodcast.com, and go up into the menu. Click on series, and it'll be right there. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. Today's podcast is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox. You can get your diabetes supplies from the same place that we do. And I'm talking about Dexcom, Libre, Omnipod, Tandem, and so much more. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the twiist AID system powered by Tidepool that features the twiist loop algorithm, which you can target to a glucose level as low as 87. Learn more at twiist.com/juicebox. That's twiist with 2 eyes.com/juicebox. Get precision insulin delivery with a target range that you choose at twiist.com/juicebox. That's TWIIST.com/juicebox.
Hi, my name is Melissa. I live in California, and I'm from the East Coast.
Melissa, why would you not tell me while we were talking for the last 5 minutes that I'm calling you Michelle and your name's Melissa?
I only heard you call me Michelle at the very end, and that, for some reason, people named Melissa always get called Michelle.
Really?
But people named Michelle never get called Melissa.
Because...
I have no idea why.
Oh, wait, I know what happened. First of all, this has nothing to do with that. I'm recording tomorrow with Michelle. And when I set your file up, I was looking at my calendar and looking at tomorrow, not today. Okay.
Well, no matter what the reason is, it happens all the time.
That's crazy that it happens all the time. And I just happen to be talking to Melissa today and Michelle tomorrow.
Maybe that's always happening every time.
Is it possible that everyone you speak to has just spoken with someone named Michelle?
It's a very common name. So yeah, I guess it's possible.
Okay. That's awesome. So now just know that the only thing in front of me says Michelle. So I'm going to try to cover it so that I don't look at it again. And then, okay, I should be okay. Awesome. I'm very sorry. That's ridiculous. Anyway, you have diabetes or something like that?
Yeah, I do. I've had diabetes since I was 8 years old, since I was 8 years old in 1991.
8 years old in 91, which is roughly 25 years ago?
No, it's more like 32 years ago.
Why is my bad math? Hold on. So take 91, you add 10, that's 2001. Then 10 more. Oh, I forgot the 2010s. Right. 11 would be 20. Happening. 21 would be 30. Then it's like 24 years ago.
What?
34.
Yeah, it's about 34 years ago.
This isn't going well.
Right.
By the way, Melissa, I almost called you Michelle on purpose just now to be funny, but then I thought people are going to think I was really doing that. So, all right. So you've had diabetes for a good long time. You're in your 40s now.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else in the family, sisters, brothers, mother, father, grandmother have type 1 diabetes?
Nobody. Not even type 2 diabetes.
Do you have a thyroid thing or anything else like that?
Nothing.
Awesome. Anybody else in the family have like celiac, thyroid?
No.
No.
Not a thing.
You don't have a bipolar uncle?
Well, my grandmother on my mother's side was schizophrenic. My grandmother on my father's side, she had Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Whoa, the what? Who?
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Guillain-Barré syndrome. And it is an autoimmune condition that's sort of similar to multiple sclerosis, I think.
Really?
I'm not 100% on the family. This isn't something that's greatly talked about, but I'm pretty sure that she had that and that it led to a fall that led to her death. But that's it. That's the only autoimmune condition in the family. And then the only other health conditions in general, I mean, not even type 2 diabetes. And the only condition there's been is cancers. People have had cancer or do have cancer currently.
Is it with frequency, people in your family?
My mother had cancer and she was a smoker. She had oral cancer, but it's very strange. So I don't know if you ever read this book called Diabetes Rising. Came out around the year 2000.
I don't read, Melissa.
Oh, that's right. I know this from the podcast. You don't read.
Go ahead.
But there are audiobooks. I don't know if there is an audiobook of this one, though, because I read this way back before.
I'm kidding. What's the book called?
But yeah, in the book Diabetes Rising, one of the things, so that's about type 1 diabetes, and it's about how incidence of it has increased dramatically. And this was written about 20 years ago, but even then, the amount of cases have gone up a lot. It went into quite a lot of detail looking into what are the various causes that might exist for type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. And there are no causations, obviously, that they can determine, but what they have are correlations that are stronger or weaker. And one of the stronger correlations is just where on earth you're located, and where you and I are from has very high incidence around New Jersey, Philadelphia, that area, very high incidence in that area. But especially right in my cul-de-sac, I lived in a cul-de-sac in west of Philly. There are 3 type 1 diabetics in my cul-de-sac. They're all up and down that street, just tons of cancer. And also a Superfund site. You know what that is?
No.
A Superfund site is just a place where there's a thing called the Superfund that places can use to clean up especially toxic, dirty areas.
Really?
Yeah.
That sucks. Have you ever gone back there and knocked on doors and been like, hey, do any of your kids have type 1 diabetes?
Well, they're our neighbors. So,
oh, you're still there. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not anymore, but my family, my father and his wife and they still live there, and their dogs.
Their dogs. Their dogs, which are, do they have any superpowers?
The dogs all have diabetes. No, just kidding.
And there's 7 diabetic dogs, Scott.
Growing up, my babysitter, who was in our cul-de-sac, she had diabetes, and she still does, obviously. And I had a wedding in my parents' front yard about a year and a half ago.
The bride and groom on the cake?
I heard a Dexcom go off, and I was like, what's going on? And it turns out it was one of my other neighbors who I always knew there was another type 1. I guess there were 3 type 1 diabetics besides myself, because there was the babysitter, her father, and then this other person who was at the wedding, and she was just ignoring her Dexcom, just like, oh, it's fine. Which I was like, you're giving me anxiety. You got to treat this.
Can you bolus, lady, so I can go on with my wedding?
Exactly.
You just got married?
Yeah. I mean, we've been together for over a decade, but yes, we recently got married.
What happened? Did it get hard to do the taxes or something like that?
You know what? To some extent, yes. Honestly, it's like, I'm just a deeply unconventional person, and I just was never like, we need to get married. That just wasn't really something where I was like, this is important to do.
Right.
But then just one day, I think we were watching a TV show. Somebody was unsure whether or not somebody would say yes to their marriage proposal. And I just said, oh man, I'd never just turn you down for a marriage proposal. If you did that, I would say yes. And he was like, really? And then he asked me shortly after, I need to drop all the hints in our relationship to make things happen, but it's fine.
You made him ask you to get married after being together for 10 years.
I didn't even mean to make him.
Oh.
I just mentioned that I think there was a part of him that was just like, I don't know if she'd want that. She's deeply unconventional.
You give off that vibe?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, for sure.
You think he thought if he asked you, you'd leave him instead? The brand new twiist insulin pump offers peace of mind with unmatched personalization and allows you to target a glucose level as low as 87. There are more reasons why you might be interested in checking out Twiist, but just in case that one got you, twiist.com/juicebox. That's twist with 2i's.com/juicebox. You can target glucose levels between 87 and 180. It's completely up to you. In addition to precision insulin delivery that's made possible by Twiist's design, Twiist also offers you the ability to edit your carb entries even after you've bolused. This gives the Twiist Loop algorithm the best information to make its decisions with. And the Twiist Loop algorithm lives on the pump, so you don't have to stay next to your phone for it to do its job. Twiist is coming very soon, so if you'd like to learn more or get on the wait list, go to twiist.com/juicebox. That's twist with 2i's.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. You've probably heard me talk about US Med and how simple it is to reorder with US Med using their email system. But did you know that if you don't see the email and you're set up for this, you have to set it up. They don't just randomly call you, but I'm set up to be called if I don't respond to the email because I don't trust myself 100%. So one time I didn't respond to the email and the phone rings at the house. It's like, ring, you know how it works. And I picked it up. I was like, hello. And it was just the recording. It was like, US Med. Doesn't actually sound like that, but you know what I'm saying. It said, hey, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's basically like, hey, your order's ready. You want us to send it? Push this button if you want us to send it. Or if you'd like to wait, I think it lets you put it off like a couple of weeks or push this button for that. That's pretty much it. I pushed the button to send it. And a few days later, box right at my door. That's it. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits checked now and get started with US Med. Dexcom, Omnipod, Tandem, Freestyle. They've got all your favorites. Even that new iLet pump. Check them out now at usmed.com/juicebox or by calling 888-721-1514. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and to all of the sponsors. The Contour NextGen blood glucose meter is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and it's entirely possible that it is less expensive in cash than you're paying right now for your meter through your insurance company. That's right. If you go to my link, contournext.com/juicebox, you're going to find links to Walmart, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Kroger, and Meijer. You could be paying more right now through your insurance for your test strips and meter than you would pay through my link for the Contour NextGen and Contour Next test strips in cash. What am I saying? My link may be cheaper out of your pocket than you're paying right now, even with your insurance. And I don't know what meter you have right now. I can't say that. But what I can say for sure is that the Contour NextGen meter is accurate. It is reliable, and it is the meter that we've been using for years. contournext.com/juicebox. And if you already have a Contour meter and you're buying test strips, doing so through the Juicebox Podcast link will help to support the show.
I don't know what he thought. He's a really great guy, like the most top-notch man you could ask for.
But
he's not like super brave, and whereas I'm like all bravery.
Oh.
I'm like 100% bravery. And so there's, to some extent, I have to lead the way in certain things. He's really responsible and reliable and extremely kind. Like I'm not very kind.
I love how you started going, I'm not as kind. And you were like, actually, that's too much credit. I'm not that kind.
Yeah, I'm not super kind. I mean, I want to be. I don't know. I should meditate on it and become kinder. But I don't know. There's just something about me. And a whole lot of that, like this like deeply unconventional way of living is so much of what I want to talk about in regards to my diabetes experiences.
Right. Well, listen, it's possible, Melissa, that you're unkind because of pollutants like heavy metals, lead, mercury, industrial chemicals, PCBs, dioxins, and radioactive materials.
I know that you just put that into Chat GPT.
I asked our friend, and this is what they said super fun site was. EPA designation identifies, investigates, and ranks sites using the national priorities list to prioritize cleanup. So they're actually sites that need to be cleaned up.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Abandoned factories, industrial plants, landfills, leaking toxic waste, old mining sites with heavy metal contamination, chemical storage, and manufacturing plants, military bases with hazardous waste. Is type 1 diabetes? I haven't done this in a while.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I was thinking as I was listening to the podcast, I was like, I hope he doesn't start chat GPTing while.
Just this one thing. I want to see, because you said the thing, and I want to see like if there's anything out there that, okay, say it says there's no definitive large scale study that provides a direct link.
Exactly. There's nothing. I mean, I could talk more about what's in that book, Diabetes Rising.
Yeah, please.
Some of the stronger correlations, they're not that interesting. The ones that you always hear about are like the weakest correlations, like cow's milk. That's an extremely weak correlation. Mm-hmm. A lot of the stronger ones I've got going on. So geographically, like there were a lot of kids in my school who had type 1 diabetes. And, where I lived, there was a whole diabetes floor of the hospital where I went to. Also, like your birth order, the higher up in your birth order that you are, the more likely you are to have diabetes. And whether or not you were breastfed, if you weren't breastfed, then you have higher incidence. But I was breastfed, and I was the second child, so I wasn't even the first. Mm. But I don't know if you realize this, but every time a woman gives birth, every child, the first one gets like the highest of her toxic load. And then each successive child has less of the toxins that have built up, like from eating fish or whatever else, all of that. You get less and less of that.
Oh, I've never heard anyone say that before. That's interesting.
It's true.
So you should make like 3 and throw them away and then really get started.
That's right. Yeah, just start over.
Get out your toxic load. Get your toxic load out. And then, yeah. Oh, gosh. I didn't realize that. No, it's awesome. Thank you.
I mean, who knows? Maybe things have changed since that book was written, but it was a fascinating book.
Yeah, it's interesting. And by the way, even though it says here that there's no studies about the Superfund sites, it does go over a number of different ways how one of those sites could impact autoimmune diseases and type 1 diabetes.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure.
So wait, you were saying something and I shifted you. Oh, crap. Hold on.
It was just about being a deeply unconventional person.
Yeah. No, thank you. So, wow, good memory. I got up very early this morning. Mm-hmm. I can't believe I'm going to say this on this podcast. I got up very early this morning to sit with Arden's new puppy.
Oh.
So that she could sleep for a couple extra hours. I know that I've given what is rock solid advice that I didn't listen to. And my rock solid advice, of course, is don't get married, don't have kids, don't get a dog. If you can avoid these 3 things, your life will probably be sadder, but easier. But anyway, our dog.
Well, I won't have kids.
Why not?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm 42.
Oh, that's a good reason.
So that's a good reason in and of itself. But no, I decided when I was pretty young not to have children, but I am a nanny and a babysitter for a living. And so I love kids and I'm really good at taking care of them and understanding them. However, like it's almost like a physical need to be with children for certain people. Mm-hmm. I feel like if I didn't work with kids, I would have that need very strongly because I get so much out of it. Like my nanny baby, after the holidays, and I didn't see him for 3 weeks. And then when I came back to him, he was asleep. And when he woke up, I went and I got him out of his crib and he just hugged me for 20 minutes, He just didn't want to do anything but hug me. And that feeling like is very difficult to replicate if you don't have any access to children. And I can see like having a hunger for them for that reason. But I've been doing this for so long, working with children and babies, that I get all of that from my work.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Like when you work at a bakery and you don't want sweets.
Exactly. Yeah.
Access to children, by the way, out of context, very weird statement.
Well,
in that context, I understood exactly what you meant. How long have you been doing that kind of work?
Since 2011.
Wow.
Before that, I used to work as a paralegal, which is not work I recommend.
Because?
So, I think Karl Marx said that work robs you of your species being. Like it makes you feel like you're not part of the species. You're just like, it's early to me too. It's 9:30. For me, that's early because like I said, I'm a deeply unconventional person. So I don't really keep regular hours. So some work very much robs you of your species being. And I feel like the work that I do now, it does not rob me of my species being. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel fulfilled. Whereas working as a paralegal it just makes you feel dead inside. It's not
very
not
repetitive.
Good work. And
you're disconnected from it by yourself, indoors, all that.
Yeah, that. And I mean, I'm sure it has a lot to do with the culture of the different places that you work, but I think that attorneys and doctors most notoriously sort of like have egos about what they do. And, I think in some small part, even the desire to be those things in our culture has something to do with like wanting to feel higher than other people. Not necessarily. I don't want to put that out there as an overarching thing, because I know there are a lot of attorneys who go into it to become public defenders and, do good work. But if you're going to be working as a paralegal, most likely you're going to be like me and doing slip and falls and things that are a lot less noble.
Did you feel like you were part of a system that was stealing from people?
Well, no, so the last place I worked as a paralegal, I think, was actually doing very good work, but it still wasn't a great place to work. But we sued nursing homes. I used to look through the documents of the people who were suing the nursing homes. I remember looking and seeing there was this woman who had type 2 diabetes, and she was taking as much insulin in a day as I took in, over a week. Mm-hmm. And I said, those are the people who are using all the insulin. And I was like, I don't even think that's effective. I'm not even sure why you're doing it that way. I don't know why you don't give them, fruits and vegetables instead, but whatever.
What makes you want to come on the podcast?
I want to talk about what it has been like to live in a very unconventional way, pretty much without doctors. And yet I've figured out diabetes since well before I had the technology. Mm-hmm. So I was in college in the year 2000 till 2003 when I dropped out. During that time, I was still on regular insulin and NPH or Humulin N still.
In 2000?
In 2000.
Wow.
And nobody had ever mentioned changing anything. Partially, I'm a victim of my own success. All right. So for one thing, it always surprises me to hear that people have never heard of pre-bolusing because, again, I was diagnosed in 1991 and, they had a pretty good program, I guess, at Montgomery Hospital because they definitely told us you're supposed to give yourself insulin a half hour before you eat. Yeah. That was always the rule. Always. I mean, that was on regular insulin. I didn't always do it. And to this day, I still don't always do it. And that's one of the reasons why, if I can convince myself to find an endocrinologist and go to one, I would love to get some Afrezza, but I really struggle with having to beg doctors for what I need.
I made an ENT appointment yesterday for myself that I should have made 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I just got up one day and I was like, why am I struggling with this? Why don't I just do it?
Well, I just don't have an endocrinologist at the moment because my last endocrinologist, she fired me. She doesn't want to see me anymore, which is wild because she really should be asking me for advice about how I do what I do. But she was angry because I don't do carb counting and I don't put carb counts into the pump. And she wants me to do things by carb counts. But I have had diabetes for so long and I got so good at it that my ability to know how much insulin I need for the food that I eat is like preternatural.
Yeah.
I just know.
Why was she insisting on you doing that?
I don't know.
How long?
So, I mean, that was one of her issues with me was that I refused to, she was really upset about my inability to provide a carb count. I said, I know you need to put something in your chart, so just put 1 to 10. Because I don't care what she puts in the charts. She was like, well, I don't like that. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. I think I must have probably said something to her about how I was like, well, I've been doing this for a really long time and I know how to do it. And my time in range is 93% and my A1C is 5.4, I think it was. And I'm just like, I don't know what you're complaining about.
Yeah. Was she new to you? Were you guys just getting... No.
She was the one who finally put me on a pump. I need you to understand, I didn't have a CGM. I always wanted a CGM. I remember through the many, many years of having figured out on my own how to do diabetes, I remember I thought to myself, if there was just some device that would track your blood sugar all the time, test it all the time, and then it would talk to a pump I mean, I remember I thought that's as good as a cure. That was what my thought was at the time. I was like, that would be so great.
Big deal. Yeah.
And then I knew that like such a thing existed, but I just had always been doing so well. And I didn't have health insurance for most of my life.
Okay.
Like when I worked as a paralegal, I did not have health insurance. Like I worked at a small practice for most of that time. And then I did finally get health insurance at the last place that I worked as a paralegal. And that was when I switched to Lantus. So we're talking about like 2008 or something when I switched to Lantus.
So tell me what you mean by I figured it out the other way. So like did you start with RNN? Was that your first insulin?
I started with RNN.
Okay. And doing what? Like shooting in the morning and at night, or how did you handle it?
Yeah, and I was figuring out my own doses pretty much. I mean, I still remember like I used to give myself 8 units at night and 3 in the morning. Or maybe it was the other way around. That doesn't matter to the audience.
You don't have to edit, Melissa. You can just keep talking. That's fine. You were having outcomes back then that were like the ones you're having now, or just you were in the 5s?
Yes, 5.2 usually, because I would go low. But I don't want you to think that I was low all the time. I could always feel my lows. Some people live their lives in fear of lows, but I do not live my life in fear of lows. I realized very early on that having diabetes type 1 is sort of like you are jumping out of an airplane and there's a target on the ground and you need to get into the bullseye target. And the closer you are to that bullseye target, it's more like you need to get into the bullseye, but not in the center. Like you just don't want to be in the center. You just want to be on that target, but not right in the center. Okay. But the whole world outside of that target is huge. So it's really easy to end up nowhere close to the target. But if you are consistently in that target, you're much more likely to occasionally hit that bullseye by accident, you know? I just embraced like, okay, well, I'm not afraid of lows. If I start to feel low, I'll just eat some sugar and I'll be okay. And so because of that, I kept my blood sugars like fairly in range with some lows, which is not to say that I didn't have dangerous lows, because I did. They were all as a result of drinking alcohol and then going to sleep. I called an ambulance one time. Pretty sure that my deceased mother like visited me in a dream to get me to wake up, give myself some sugar. I definitely had some dangerous lows. Like, I'm not going to pretend like everything in my life was perfect.
Were they frequent?
I mean, I would say that during that time, I mean, it's hard to know because I didn't have a CGM. I was testing my blood sugar like 10 plus times a day. And I want you to understand something. So when I went to college, I still had health insurance. This was before the Affordable Care Act. And so I did not get to stay on my parents' insurance until I was 24. And as soon as you dropped out of college, you lost your insurance.
Right.
When I did that, I did as best as I could. I was always testing and I had a mantra, test and treat, I repeat, test and treat. I honestly did like a pump style regimen, but with MDI, where I would give myself like the smallest bit of insulin. On those syringes, they have like, you could get ones that have a half unit. And I used to get those. And I would give myself like a little tiny driplet of insulin. So I was giving myself a ridiculous number of shots for so many years, and I destroyed the fat on my body.
Were you just shooting at the same place all the time?
No, I was doing my all over my thighs and all over my stomach, and that's about it. I would love to be able to use different parts of my body, but for some reason, nobody can explain this, but my sites fail. They just fail all the time. Like, I mean, you can try to explain it, but I've never heard anyone on the podcast say it. And no one's ever heard of what happens with me. But like the true steel, which is the ones that are supposed to not occlude ever, those occlude constantly for me, nonstop. And the only ones that work for me, the only infusion sites that work are the Autosoft 30s.
Who makes that?
That's Tandem. But these are the ones that go in at a 30-degree angle.
Right.
And let me tell you, they scar. They really do. They scar. But they work. And so I use them.
Do you have problems when you were injecting?
It's hard to say because there were times when I felt like that shot didn't even make a difference. And it felt a lot like what used to happen with what happens when I would use like True Steel or whatever, where I'm like, for some reason at this site, I'm getting no absorption. I think that it's possible that that was an issue, but it's also, it's really hard to tell because I didn't have a CGM. And so I was just testing a lot and I would just give myself many shots. So if one didn't work, the next one might.
Okay. Jeez. Just kind of want to like refocus for a second on the R&N time. You were managing testing correct you were doing with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I did that. And, I'm honestly, I'm so thankful that I had that time doing that because I know that no matter what happens, if I was extremely broke, I mean, now I have health insurance through my husband, but if I had no health insurance and I had no money, I can totally survive off of Walmart for pretty minimal cost and not just survive, but thrive. And I could keep my blood sugars at, a 5.2 A1C. And I'd probably do better at it now, even than then, now that I understand more due to having had a CGM for a while.
Is there an eating style at play here, or do you just eat what you want?
Oh, yeah.
What's your style?
I've been a vegan for a long time, a very long time. But the thing is, sometimes I'm a healthy vegan and other times I'm a junk food vegan. I find junk food veganism. It's the same as when I used to just like eat, pizza and everything, just when I used to just, prior to that, I ate like whatever. I used to eat like a lot of like frozen chicken from a bag that I would stick in the oven. Like,
I know a junk food vegan. Like, so it's interesting. They're like, I don't eat meat, but no, I don't really eat vegetables either. I eat mostly potato chips. I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah, I love me some potato chips. And actually, though, if you're going to eat like that, like if you're going to eat junkily, in a way, Humulin R is great.
Because you're grazing and it's spread out and that kind of an idea.
There was a long time, even after I switched to finally having Humalog, I still kept some R. I used to keep both on hand. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get Humalog. I was able to get Humalog through Lilly Cares. Lilly used to...
Yeah, the program.
Yeah. I used Lilly Cares for a long time for that, but they don't make Lantus. So I was just using N and Humalog.
So you have an eating style. It's not what I thought. I thought you were going to say I'm like more low carb or something like that. But okay.
No, I did. I used to try. I tried everything. Yeah. But I was using way more insulin when I was low carb. Way more insulin. So like if you eat a healthy vegan lifestyle where you like are eating pretty low fat, I eat my 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. And for sure I have like regular foods that I eat, which is also helpful. Mm-hmm. I mean, mostly what I eat is like, I eat like a whole unprocessed grain, like a quinoa, or, I use like the most brownish rice you can find, like that's grown in India, because the ones grown in China have arsenic. If you eat like a whole grain, like a vegetable, like something leafy, like a mix of, and like a nice delicious sauce of some sort that isn't like super sugary, but even if it is sugary, that's okay. Because I find that a meal like that, it's just so easy to dose for. I don't struggle with that at all. And if you eat like a raw food, I mean, I'm not a raw food dieter or anything like that, but the easiest foods by far, like if I'm going to go out to eat and not struggle to dose, I really recommend a raw food restaurant, which sounds gross, but it's actually like usually delicious.
Melissa, are you a hippie?
No, not at all. I'm more like a rock and roller, like a punk.
Okay. All right. We can bleep this out, but would you have a different last name in my Facebook group than you have on this?
Yes.
Okay. Get ready to have your mind fucking blown. Okay.
All right.
I searched for you just to see who I'm talking to about 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
The last post you put up has a reply from, do you want to guess who?
Sure. No, I don't know who.
The Michelle that I'm recording with tomorrow.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy?
Whoa.
I couldn't believe it. Like you popped up and I'm like, oh, this is definitely her. And then I looked down and the last comment in your last post is from that person. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't understand. How does the world work? How does it know?
You can do the gateway tapes and try to figure that out.
And did you just mention Lily? a minute ago?
Well, the Eli Lilly,
Yeah.
Lilly Cares.
That person used to work there. What's going to
I own quite a lot of stock in Eli Lilly.
Do you?
And it's done quite well for me, yeah.
You're in the market, are you?
Yeah, I am. And I don't normally own individual stocks. Mostly I just do like whole market ETFs. But when I first got started, I was just like, I'm just going to buy a bunch of individual stocks of companies that I like. And
Right.
I was like, I just like Lilly because they helped me out for so many years. And so I bought a bunch of stock, and then that stock like skyrocketed.
Good for you.
It's still doing well. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's like just gone even for like maybe a year or so. But when I bought it, it was pretty cheap. And then I guess because of Zepbound and everything, it
jumped up.
It really has skyrocketed.
Yeah, we're not giving stock advice. I think we have to say that.
Yeah, I don't have any stock advice. My stock advice is invest in a mutual fund.
I was going to say, I know for a fact you're the first person to say whole market ETF on the podcast for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is honestly the most rational. That's what like anybody will tell you to do if you're just like a casual investor. Yeah. I mean, everybody needs to be invested in order to retire. Hopefully you're invested to retire.
I am trying my hardest. Yes. Thank you.
I sure hope so. You should have been doing it for years.
We have been putting money into a 401k since the first year my wife had a job.
Yeah, but then did you invest with that 401k? Because a lot of people just put their money into these accounts thinking that it's being invested, but it's not. So it's just sitting there. It's just savings.
We have a person who looks at the money and makes changes to it as the year goes on.
Okay. Yes. All right. Good.
And then they take 1%.
You're probably paying them like 1% to 2%.
I pay them 1% of.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's terrible. But
I would not see. I would just invest in a whole market ETF. It's literally just like if you invest in an ETF like VT or VTI, that is just the entire stock market. And if you look at the entire stock market over time, it's just gone up and up and up, and just that that gives you a 10% return a year, on average.
Yeah.
And that beats what individual investors do. It's insane. People make it so complicated, but it's actually so simple.
My guy's done 9-10% for the last 6 years.
Right. I know, but it would have been like 11 or 12. I mean, the market, the past, decade has been insane. It's just.
Well, it's getting ready to jump again. So.
I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, it could be. I mean, the thing is that everybody is greatly invested in making sure that's the case.
I know very little about this, but I've been alive long enough to know that companies seem to do better under Republican presidents. So I'm expecting a little bit of a swing in the.
I mean, I don't think that's actually technically true. These past 4 years the market has skyrocketed.
But it has been very good.
And it was great through Clinton. Unfortunately, George W. Bush crashed the economy. And then, of course, Trump under COVID did as well. So there was like a huge crash. So I don't really think it makes a difference who's in office as far as the stock market goes, because everybody has a great deal of interest in keeping the stock market continually rising.
Yeah. I would say this. I do think that as an adult, the most money I made on any money I had invested, and it wasn't very much then, obviously, but because we were pretty young, but the Clinton years were very positive.
Yeah.
There was a big leap this year during these last couple of years during Biden.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that when Republicans come in, a lot of times they'll cut restrictions. And I think it makes everybody believe that there's going to be more money made.
It gives irrational exuberance.
Yeah, right. And everybody gets super excited for a while. The market jumps up.
And then there's a crash.
And then about 2 years in, it usually starts to trend the other way.
Usually their horrible policies do affect the economy negatively eventually. Right. The thing is that there's a real economy, and then there's like the economy that just is affecting those who invest. And those are different things.
Yeah. And I want to say, I would prefer that water and air and stuff like that be clean. But at the same time, like I've noticed over and over again, like you said, when those restrictions get lifted, it does create, and the stock market is
the thing is people talk about restrictions, but what restrictions are you talking about? Like, do you actually...
Oh, I don't think anyone knows. I just think that it's the vibe in the world that's happening, and everybody gets a little more excited with their investing, and then everything kind of pumps up a little bit for a while. And then when it doesn't bear
well,
fruit.
there's also a lot of fraud and dishonesty so what happens is we get Enron situations when we have an SEC who's not like looking into these companies to make sure that they're actually, behaving lawfully.
Yeah.
So the more fraud and deceit that you have, the higher the stock prices are going to go, but it's irrational.
Oh, no, for sure. I think everything around the stock market's irrational.
To huge, it's all just vibes. It used to be different. It used to be that those things had to do with how well the companies performed and their cost ratio and all these different things. But now it's pretty much all just vibes, and it's so crazy. And who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah. By the way, like politically, I don't have an opinion that I hold enough that I would want to share publicly, because I don't think it probably holds water. That is the vibe, is that like everyone just gets excited and then things just trend for no reason. It's not about profits, not about, like you said, it's not about cost. It's just about like, oh, I think that's a good idea, or I don't like the guy that runs that company, so that it goes the other way, or that stuff is insane. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
the things that have really skyrocketed are almost just entirely based on vibes. Like the ETFs that are just invested in semiconductor stuff, like QQQ, these types of ETFs. I mean, my God, those are just like, those companies aren't even turning a profit.
No, a lot of those companies are borrowing money to stay going.
Yeah.
They're like, we have an angel investor. I'm like, okay. Like you said, meanwhile, there's companies out there. They've got, they treat their employees well. They're following the rules. They're making money. They're not spending too much. They show a profit, and their stock sits, and it doesn't matter.
So it gives you about a 10% return a year if you're invested in just like normal things like Lilly, these like blue chip stocks where it's just like, these are proven companies. They're not going to go bankrupt. They're turning a profit, maybe inventing something that is freaking awesome. Like, I don't think that Lilly didn't invent Zepbound, but having a product like that will help your stock price. But ultimately, it's just about running a good company. Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on...
That's another thing. It's never happened before. By the way, I will say this, though. I had a doctor on the other day from Joslin, and he's on staff at Harvard as well. And he was talking about, he doesn't think injectable GLPs will be long for the world. He thinks that they're going to get more pow for their punch out of an oral medication sooner than you think.
Sure.
Yeah. So
nobody likes to inject.
Yeah.
I was just listening to your episode about injection fear, and I was thinking about how, even though I have diabetes, when I watch TV, I can't stand the thought. I'm okay with insulin shots. Those don't bother me to even see or to think about, but I can't watch a needle on TV going into somebody. I mean, I get all my vaccines, but I don't like how they go into my shoulder. One time I got the breathing thing. I got a
nebulizer.
It's just it's when you get really sick and you have, it's such a common word, but yeah, it's like I got a vaccine to make sure that your lungs don't fill with water. What the heck is that called? It starts with an A, I feel like.
You've got me going in circles. I'm not sure. Yeah. I can't get off over, like, I'm trying to decide how you learned about the stock market and investing.
I'm just very smart. And I do read books, like a lot of them, like 100 or so a year.
Really? How many is that a week?
Well, I listen to audiobooks, and I listen at like 1 and 1.5 speed.
Mm-hmm. I got Audible recently, and I was like, so there's this book I want to read, and it's just dry, so I'll just let somebody download it into my head through audio, is the way I was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm so spoiled about entertainment.
Because of podcasts?
Yeah, I got it on. I'm like, this is boring.
Well, what book was it?
I don't want to say. I'm not trying to badmouth the book.
I hear that, but I also want to know.
It could have been the person reading it. Like, I have no idea. But I was like, all right, this sucks. Like, so I'm going to try a different one.
Well, don't use Audible, because then you're paying per book and you feel bad about it. Just get your libraries. You have a library card, right?
No, a library.
You don't have a library card?
Well, I haven't been to a library since I was 9.
Yeah, but you can just go in and just show your ID and get a library card, and then that will give you access to Libby, which is an app. And then you just put whatever audiobook you want on hold. And when it's ready, you'll get to take it out of the library and you can listen to it. And then you don't have to feel bad about abandoning it. If you hate it, you don't feel like I just paid $15 for the month on Audible or whatever.
I don't understand what Libby is. Like,
Libby is an app.
It's digital?
For audio listening.
Why
and
Good.
Also, you can get Kindle books as well through it. But yeah.
Why do I have to wait for it to be available if it's digital?
Because it's from the library. So there are other people in line before you.
So it's not digital. It's not like a link or a file then. It's
an audiobook. It's on an app. It's just like your Audible app, except it's called Libby.
I don't understand why more than one person can't listen to it at once.
Well, because they've cut deals with the libraries to use the physical books are the same way, honestly.
They're limiting it until somebody else is done with it.
Correct. Like they have a certain number of copies available. And then after the library has used up the number of copies that they got the right to give,
they can rebuy
whatever they bought. They have to buy it again.
That makes sense. Okay.
And then a really popular book, they might originally get 100 copies, but then as the book gets less popular, they're not going to keep buying 100 copies. They're just going to buy, however many they need.
I'm going to ask you a question that there's no way you should know the answer to see if you know the answer, because you're starting to freak me out.
Okay.
What humidity does my chameleon want to live at?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay, God, I was glad because I thought I was going to just keep saying things that you're going to be like, oh, I know about that. It's like freaking me out.
Oh my gosh, that's like Rosemary's Baby. Are you familiar with Rosemary's Baby?
I don't do scary movies.
Oh my gosh, that's a shame.
Yeah, I don't. They seem silly to me.
I've got Rosemary's Baby memorized, and there's a part where this old guy he says, "You name a place, I've been there. Name a place," and he's like, "Sitka, Alaska," and he's like, "I've been there. Great city." No matter what. Anyway,
what's the town in Alaska?
I think I said Sitka, but I'm not sure that's actually a town. Sitka might be the name of the town.
I'm going to find out because I think that's what your episode is going to be called.
Oh no, I hate that.
You weren't going to like whatever I picked.
Most famously, he cites Dubrovnik, which is in Croatia, as a place. At the end, Rosemary says, "Don't talk to me, you're in Dubrovnik."
Dubrovnik?
Yeah, and I think most people don't. When they watch the movie, there's a lot of stuff in that movie that it's really not a scary movie in the way that some movies are scary, Right. Okay. There's no gore.
I believe you. I should watch it. I know the reference. Isn't that enough?
No, it's one of the best movies.
All right, I'll put it on the list of movies that I'll probably never watch. But you know what?
If you prefer, you can read the book by Ira Levin.
Does it sound like that's going to happen?
Which is exactly the same as the movie, except for one scene.
Okay.
Anyway, let's talk about diabetes. I have so much to say about diabetes.
So tell me what you want to say about diabetes then.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many experiences, just so much. First of all, when I was growing up, we didn't have all of this technology. And I feel so bad for the parents today because they are worrying so much because they have so much detail about what's going on with their kids' blood sugars. And me, so when I was a kid, we didn't even have carb counting or anything. We just had exchanges. You're supposed to have one exchange of carbohydrates and one exchange of protein or whatever. But we never did a good job keeping at any of that. And there wasn't any adjustment to my insulin dose due to blood sugar, or the adjustment was minimal. And so eventually I actually spent about 2 years where I didn't test my blood sugar at all. I never tested my blood sugar because it made no difference. It just felt like it was a way for doctors to yell at you when you went into the office because your blood sugars weren't good. Uh-huh. So I was like, well, why not just make up all of this? All I ever used to do was just invent blood sugars and write them in those little books they would give us, which those books never made sense either because everybody expects you to be on a schedule. But I just never, even as a kid, I just never could keep to any sort of regular human being schedule.
Yeah. Do you think they wanted those numbers in the book to help you, or just because they were supposed to be there and they could say that it was there?
I'm sure that the idea is to help you. I mean, I don't think they just do it to be evil or anything like that.
No, I don't think that. Yeah.
Let's torture them, make them write these numbers in a book. And actually, so my father, he's a computer programmer and he invented the first program to he was like, I'm going to invent something where he used to hook up my one-touch 2 glucometer. I don't know if you've ever seen those on the internet, but the old school glucometer. But he invented something that would pull the data from it and write down all the blood sugars to solve this problem.
Wow. How long ago was that?
I mean, it must have been in 1994.
Jeez. Did he do that just for you, or did he do it?
Yeah, just for me.
Oh, that's lovely.
He also invented a program to help me spell. He made a thing where you could record. I could record my spelling words, and then I had to type it in. And so first I would record my voice, and then it would give it to me spelling bee style.
Can you go back to what you think about parents struggling nowadays? Because because I want to hear what you're going to say, and then I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You might, but you also might not. I just feel a lot of sympathy for them because I can see how stressful it is. And like my parents, I don't get the impression that my father was super stressed about it. My mother may have been stressed about it, but I think she mostly just felt guilty. Like she felt like it was like a failure as a parent that I got diabetes.
Okay.
Which of course it was not. And I used to have middle of the night lows. And that was really the big problem, was that I would have middle of the night lows and I would wake up like screaming. Well, mostly the middle of the night lows would wake me up and I would just go to their bed and like wake them. And then eventually I switched to just like, I'll just go downstairs and get some juice. But at first I used to wake them. I mean, I think what happens when you go to sleep and you have low in your sleep is that you have a nightmare. The low blood sugar nightmares are freaking crazy. I remember I had this nightmare that low and high were playing tennis and that low was this like big giant blob and the tennis was just getting squished. The high sugar was just getting squished. And I was like, oh my God. And I would wake up screaming and they would we did have glucagon, but at the time they told us that glucagon was for when you're passed out. And I've never passed out, but I have had seizures. One time I had a seizure at a folk festival. I know I said I'm not a hippie, but I did used to go to some folk festivals like the Philadelphia Folk Festival. And I had a seizure at one while I was on a hammock and in the wee hours of the morning.
Do you think you and I grew up really close to each other?
I think we grew up really close to each other.
Yeah, I think so too.
I've gotten that impression so many times listening to the podcast. I'm just like, you are my neighbor. I just know it.
Interesting. And listen, I have to ask at this point, do you have ADHD, ADD?
I don't know.
You have not completed one thought in the last 54 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Which I think for podcasting is awesome because I enjoy this conversation because I like the way it flows through. But I tried twice to get you to tell me what you think about how parents feel nowadays with technology. And we are at a folk festival right now on the second try.
Right.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, I don't know. Listen, I work with parents. I mean, I'm constantly in different people's homes, and just the way that parenting is in general is so different now from when I was growing up. And to some extent, like my family cannot be blamed for anything in regards to how I was raised with diabetes because I am a very headstrong person. It's very difficult to influence me. And so they can't be blamed for like not taking stronger control of my diabetes and, letting these low blood sugars happen or whatever. But I just feel like these days they have Dexcoms going off on their own phone and everything. And the thing that really makes me feel nightmarish when I hear about it is the school stuff, the stuff with the schools. Because when I was at school, I wouldn't let them have anything to do with my diabetes. And I used to give myself a shot whenever I wanted. They did try to tell me that I had to go to the nurse's office for things, but I just didn't do that. I just didn't do it because some people are comfortable with breaking rules and others aren't. And I'm somebody who is comfortable breaking a rule that I think doesn't make sense, that does no harm.
When you see people, do you think they're overwhelmed or they're paying attention too closely, or like they're
overwhelmed? I think that it's information overload. And here's what I really think. I think that children's bodies are extremely resilient. And so, when I was a kid, my hemoglobin A1Cs were like, I mean, this doesn't sound that bad, but they were like 8 or 9, which for me, that's very high. It seemed like I was very high, but I understand seeing other people's that might be like a great A1C to a lot of people. Nowadays, first of all, kids are not given as much autonomy as they were given when I was younger. I think that's a problem.
How do you know that?
I think that children need to learn how to take care of their own diabetes, especially they should never, ever be given restrictions on treating their low blood sugar. When I was a kid, the snack that they gave you for low blood sugar treating was always these crinkle crackers that are in like a 6-pack, a crinkly 6-pack, and they had like peanut butter or cheese between crackers. Yeah. And I got so good at opening those crinkly packets extremely silently, like when people were like talking or coughing, and like also like putting the crackers into my mouth and like basically letting them melt in my mouth and not chewing too noticeably and not leaving any crumbs.
But Melissa, where are you getting the idea that somebody's overwhelmed from, or that kids aren't allowed to treat with a certain way, or any of the things that you've
I see it in the group, in all the groups. People are making these like elaborate systems where, okay, so some of the kids, if they're like super young, they might need some help. I don't know, maybe dosing. I guess probably dosing is what you would need help with. I see so much struggling with the schools, and I'm just like, oh my God, I would not let the schools have anything to do with my diabetes caretaking.
But they might not have a choice in some situations. The schools might have rules, or they're being resistant and they have to go to lawyers.
I know,
or something
and
like that.
I hate that. I hate that for them.
Of course. No, I do too. I also want to say that when you were a kid, you were shooting once in the morning and once in the afternoon.
No, I started, so at some point, I started to go to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and they did teach you about carb counting there.
You did MDI at some point then?
Yeah, and this is still on MDI, of course. But yeah, I started to give myself insulin for whatever I ate.
Right.
And also in order to treat high blood sugar. So that was like a revolution for me. When
That's awesome. But if I put one of those parents on here and let them talk back to you and they said, hey, that's awesome, but your A1C was 9 and my kid's A1C is 6.
But then my A1C. So once I learned to carb count and everything, so that was like probably middle school sometime. So I was in 3rd grade when I started, and it must have been like 7th grade when I finally learned to carb count. After that, my A1C has never been, my A1C hasn't been above 6 since then, I don't think, my whole life.
Then why don't you go back to doing it that way?
To MDI?
Yeah.
Well, because the pump is a dream. Are you kidding? Like, so first of all, the pump, I run the Tandem T-Slim on sleep mode 24/7.
Control IQ?
Yeah. And that was another thing that my endocrinologist hated. She kept asking me, why do you keep it on sleep mode? And I'm like, well, because the target blood sugar is 100 on sleep mode. And she was just like, well, I don't know what she was just so angry about that. She really did not like me keeping it on sleep mode. But the thing is that whenever you would ask her like specific questions about diabetes, she would be like, well, I don't know anything about that. Talk to the Tandem rep. And so I talked to the Tandem rep quite a bit. And the Tandem rep was like, yeah, keeping it on sleep mode 24/7 is honestly one of the best things you can do. You'll have such great blood sugars doing it that way. So they're like, if you're that kind of person, then yeah, that's great.
I don't think anybody spends more time looking at diabetes communities than maybe I do. And what I think happens is that there are some people who are overwhelmed, or there's some people who are helicoptering, or there's some people who are whatever, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Fighting with school, whatnot. But those people they're not everybody. And as a matter of fact, they're so not even a high percentage of the people. But I think it's what sticks with adults with type 1 so much. Your response, like, I think it's lovely that you're concerned for people, but your response that, oh my God, those people are doing something that they shouldn't be doing or don't have to be doing.
I don't think that they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, to be clear.
Okay. Well,
I think they're doing great. I just feel for them. It just feels really, it's very difficult to control diabetes.
Yeah,
you're a different sort of a person, but it's really difficult to control diabetes when you can't feel your blood sugars.
Right.
For me, I know what my blood sugar is without looking at the Dexcom. I think it's a really good activity in general. You should know your blood sugars without looking. And you can learn to do that simply by, before you look at what your blood sugar is, just guess what it is. Just take a guess and then look and see if you're right. I know I'm going to go low before the Dexcom is going to tell me that I'm going to go low. Right. I can feel it. Yeah. And I also I can feel if my blood sugar is over 120, if you're high,
you get cloudy or how do you feel?
I feel this like sort of vague feeling in the center of my body that feels a little bit like thirst, but it's not true thirst.
Interesting.
It feels a little different.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm misunderstanding you then. Like, you're not saying like you're trying too hard or you're paying too close attention. You're just saying, I feel bad because you're aware of all this, and then we got to get through without having to be as aware of all this.
You're yourself. You need to deal with yourself, and your kid eventually needs to learn to deal with themselves as well. Already parenting is so much like having a physical body outside of yourself as well, and to such a large extent, like, you are your children, and it's wild. I can see it with the parents, and I feel for it. It's really stressful. Whereas like when I was a kid, It was kind of like, hey, as long as she's kicking, she's doing fine.
Listen, I understand also there wasn't really a way to do better than that.
Right.
I disagree is the wrong word because I don't know if I'm right or not, but the one thing that I'm not willing to take the risk on is, they're little, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's not a thing I think.
It matters a great deal because of how the kids feel. If you switch your diet, especially if you do it when you're young and you start to eat more fruits and vegetables and legumes, people always ignore the legumes. If you eat that stuff, like your body will heal itself. The harm that gets done from inflammation, from the high blood sugars, and it's like your body is going to heal. But the thing that doesn't heal and the thing that is a real struggle is the things that happen to your mind and your social relationships as a result of varying blood sugars.
Listen, I agree with all that about the psychological side of it. I don't know that I'm willing to bet my kid's future on a legume.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say you should bet your kid's future. I think you've done an amazing job. And and I'm not concerned for your daughter.
No, I don't feel like you are.
I notice this across the board, not just with diabetes, but I worry about a lot of a lot of them seem to lack a preparedness, like an ability to do things on their own in regards to a lot of things. Like, a lot of the times, like I ask the kids, I'll babysit, I'll be like, do you know your address? Like when I was a kid, we knew like our parents' phone number and our address by heart. And I'm like, what if you were kidnapped and you escaped? Do you know your parents' full names?
Wait, you're worried for children of people on a community web board who have diabetes because somebody you babysit doesn't know their address?
It's a lot of kids. And it's also listening to teachers. I don't know if you listen to what teachers are saying about.
Not since I was little, and I didn't think it was a good idea then, but go ahead.
Right. Well, it's like, get on teacher YouTube sometime and watch what's sort of happening with the classrooms. COVID certainly didn't help. I think that to a large extent, in general, there's maybe an over-involvement with kids where it's starting to have a negative effect on children's ability to do things for themselves. And that concerns me. But at the same time, I also recognize that literally every generation has been the next generation. They can't do anything for themselves. So I'm I don't know, maybe it's just
I know a moron who's in their 50s, a moron that's in their 40s, a moron that's in their 30s and 20s and 10s. And I know 5 teachers I wouldn't let help me cross the street.
Yeah.
I also know great teachers and I also know wonderful people. What I'm thinking happens is that when you bring a bunch of people together in a community, sometimes more often than not, the people who are struggling speak up more than the people who aren't. And that it gives the impression that everyone is struggling. And I just don't think that's true. Because I talk to all the people who are doing really well, whose kids are really thoughtful and know how to, know what their diabetes address is and all that stuff. I don't even know how to describe it, but I think your compassion or other people's compassion is somehow coupled with, this is me from 1,000 yards away, just observing, okay? But I think if you grew up with type 1, and you're doing well now, meaning you don't have trigger finger, you don't have neuropathy, you're not getting injections in your eyes, and you didn't spend a ton of time focusing on data and everything. What your takeaway was, hey, listen, we weren't paying that close attention like you guys are, and I'm doing great. Now, I can go find another person who's your age who has neuropathy or trigger finger or Dupinger's whatever, or all the other problems that can come with unmanaged type 1. And they'll say, you know what they'll tell me? I wish my parents would have paid closer attention because maybe my health would be better now. You have these two perspectives, and then you're looking at a person whose kid was just diagnosed. The people who didn't have trouble are asking them to chill out, and the people who did have trouble are asking them to pay closer attention.
Well, I definitely don't think that parents shouldn't try to care for children's diabetes by any stretch.
No, I know you're not saying that. I'm saying this is kind of a big, broad conversation.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that then you're a parent and then you pivot in one of two different general directions. You either go, that's the kids thing. They're going to have to learn it because they're going to be an adult one day. So we'll put it on them. And then out of sight, out of mind, whatever happens. This is what the Lord wanted, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then there's other people who will say look, I'm going to pay closer attention to this, give this kid a decent launch into life with good health. And hopefully that other stuff will pick up. Honestly, if I blindfolded you and kept you blindfolded for 3 days and then stood you up and said, okay, here's the deal, Melissa. There's either a cliff in front of you or there's not. Do you want to step forward? You'd say, no. If there's a cliff there, I don't want to fall off. And I think that's where those people are. Like, I don't know that they're certain that all this work and effort is definitely going to lead to good health. Like, right, it's still, you could do everything right, and you could still have a medical issue. But I think they think that it gives them a better than coin flip chance if they put this effort in now. Now, where I completely agree with you is that you can't ignore people's mental health and say, yeah, but look, they've got a 5.2 A1C. Like, that's not okay either. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm not even talking about people with good A1Cs who might have mental health difficulties. I guess what concerns me is I do think that there's a large extent to which kids should learn as soon as possible to have autonomy over their diabetes. I was 8 when I got diabetes, which, that's older than a lot of people, that's older than Arden was, and that's older than a lot of kids. And I babysit a lot of 8-year-olds, and I know what they're like, and I know what it's like when they're younger, and what they may or may not be capable of. I was a smart kid, and I was capable of a lot pretty quickly. Although I didn't give myself shots for the longest time. I used to use auto injectors. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Auto injectors.
There were 2 kinds. One, like you would put this syringe into this big giant thing, and you would press this button that was like, and it would like really fast, like both inject and give the plunger. Right. And then later they stopped making that, and that one broke. And I switched to one where you just press a button and that puts it in for you, and then you push the plunger.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then eventually, actually, it wasn't until college that I stopped using that. And it was because I lost my insurance. I had dropped out, and I was just taking part-time classes. And then I had this professor who I'm still in touch with. She was a women's studies professor, and she had diabetes, and she had switched to a pump, and she gave me all of her old syringes.
Nice.
Which syringes was always the most difficult thing to get out of all of the stuff. And the second most difficult thing back then was test strips. Test strips were extremely expensive. And I searched all over the internet, and I found this Canadian pharmacy that had the cheapest test strips for a brand called Prodigy Autocode. And I used to use Prodigy Autocode strips because they cost similar to what Walmart is today.
Okay.
And that's how I used to test 1 million times a day without any insurance, which was really what I meant to talk about this whole time.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing you figured that out. That is true, right? Like, I know that from your notes that everything you were able to accomplish for yourself for a long time was without insurance.
Right.
Yeah. Without
doctors too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never found doctors to be particularly helpful, but at the same time, I did need one to get on a pump, which if I could make myself less of a stubborn a-hole and switch to a pump earlier, I would. Unfortunately, the past is the past.
It just didn't go that way.
I just was so I was like, why would I switch? Everything's going great. And then I was like, oh, when everything is going great is exactly when you should switch, because switching to the pump, it wasn't even an adjustment. I was already doing that, but now I just had to do way less.
Right.
I never struggled with the basal. The basal was exactly right immediately.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, if you're doing all that work with MDI and it's working out for you like that, then automating
That's exactly when you should switch. I always see people saying that. They're like, everything's going great on MDI. Why should I switch? Like, that's why you should switch. Because if everything's going great on MDI, you have no idea how much less work you could be doing for exactly that same result. And they're like, well, I see people and they struggle. And it's like, well, they're struggling because they don't have their numbers dialed in yet. They don't have their ratios and everything.
Right.
But if you are already doing good on MDI, that's exactly when you should switch.
Be able to accomplish it. Yeah. And maybe get some more sleep too, Oh,
I never get sleep. I'm like the least sleeping person ever, but yeah.
Because you don't want to sleep, or not because you're diabetes?
There's just something wrong with me. I don't need as much sleep as other people.
I slept not enough last night. I just want to say
so did I, because I had to get up what to me is early to talk to you.
Freaking podcast. I know, it's horrible. I had to get up.
But you know what? It's okay, because if I take a little nap later, that's when you're the most likely to lucid dream. So
you're going to go nappy?
Yeah, I might have a little nappy.
Nice.
And that will help me lucid dream. So that's great.
I appreciate you doing this very much. Sincerely. Yeah, no, I think it's a great perspective. Again, I like a free-flowing conversation. They're more my speed. But I like digging in too. And I see people say the things you said all the time. And it was interesting to hear you pick through what you meant by I'm worried about them. Because I think what can happen online is, hey, I'm worried about you, blah, blah, blah. And somebody comes back and they're a little like, well, you don't have to worry about me because I'm doing this thing. And then they go, well, I grew up with diabetes and I didn't put this much effort into it and I'm fine. And then before you know it, they're like banging together. And I'm like, you two guys.
Well, some people aren't fine.
Yeah. And right. And I'm like, and you guys have so much in common that you don't know. Like that to me is always the thing I'm trying to get across when adults and parents are talking to each other. Like you have so much to share with each other that the two of you would benefit from, back and forth. And you have way more in common than you think you do.
Well, I think that to a large extent, it also has to do with like whatever each individual's feelings are about their own childhood. Sometimes things that people say, it picks at wounds you have.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I used to sneak food all the time, and I see other people struggling with that. And what seems really wild to me is that those kids, even though they could just press buttons on their pump, they don't bolus for their food sneaking. And I was the biggest food sneaker you could imagine. I used to get like a bag of Honey Nut Cheerios, and I would hide in my closet and read a book with a flashlight and eat Honey Nut Cheerios. I mean, you could just think of it. I mean, my blood sugar must have been 600, but I wasn't testing,
Right.
If I had known then, like, all I have to do is give myself some insulin and then I can have this food, then I would have done it. But I see these parents, their kids are not doing that. They're refusing to do the insulin. And I don't understand why.
So then when you say these parents, what I'm going to tell you is you mean 4 posts over the last 6 months.
Well, no, I think a lot of people struggle with this. I see this a lot, and it's everywhere. I mean, it's not the parents' fault, because I totally understand the desire to be rebellious as like a diabetic youth.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for them because at least my parents, they didn't know.
But what happened to you? Because you just said, it's something from your childhood. And I'll tell you right now, observation, if a person has, as an adult, grown up with, still has, or had at some point an eating disorder, they are going to freak out if you say that your kid should eat a certain low carb style or something
right.
like that. It triggers something in them very, very visceral, right?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Of course it does.
Like I said, I'm a vegan, but I actually think it's pretty rude to talk about your eating style, just in general. I try to avoid it.
I don't like it when people tell other people how to eat. I just find it to be a waste of time, and all you're going to do is insult
rude.
people.
It's rude.
Yeah. What happened to you when you were a kid that makes you have this strong feeling when you see people living in a certain way?
I don't really feel like my feelings are that strong about it. I just feel a great deal of sympathy, and I feel worried about the kids who refuse to take on autonomy. I mean, I don't think that it's that they're not being allowed to take on autonomy. I'm sure a lot of parents would be very happy to give their children more autonomy if they felt that their children were up to the task.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that the only thing I can say that did happen was that I had a friend whose little brother had diabetes, and he came and stayed with us for a while. And I really tried to talk him into just take care of your diabetes.
Yeah.
But he never did. And then he died.
Oh, it sucks. Maybe that's your thing.
What's that?
Maybe that's the thing that has you upset.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm just why did you never just take it onto yourself? Just care about yourself a little bit.
Mm.
For me, diabetes is like a sixth sense.
Yeah.
Not taking care of it would be not going to the bathroom or not ever eating or not,
Well, the vibe works for you. You know how to do it. It doesn't upset you to take care of it.
I mean, sometimes it upsets me, but yeah, there are things that really upset me. There are times when I made a deal when I was a kid. Here, I'll tell you what, here, diabetes is you just take care of me always, constantly for the rest of your life, not stop. And I'll ruin your life. How's that?
I think that it's possible that if you take this conversation out of diabetes, you'll see that the same outcomes exist in people's lives about other things too. Some people are just more inclined or interested or able or whatever. It doesn't really matter what the modifying word is, right? To do a thing than other people are. And some of those people get diabetes. And so some of them, it
has to do with intelligence, and not just different types of intelligences, but I'm a highly capable person. If I need to learn something, I will learn it. I wanted to learn to play an instrument. I was already 30. I learned to play. I've written a lot of stuff. I've gotten short stories published, and I was just I'm going to write some short stories and get some short stories published. And so I was I just did it, I just worked at it until I did it.
I think that's great for people that it works out for. I don't think that people who it doesn't work out for should be, held to the same standard, maybe. Like, I think you are who you are, and some situations vibe better with how some people are built than others. But those people are all still going to have type 1. They're going to need something.
I think it's so great that there are these like pumps now where it's just all right, if maybe my friend's little brother would have survived if he had the type of pump where it's like, it doesn't keep you at 100 all the time, but it might keep you around 150, 160.
Yeah. Imagine that kid with an eyelet pump, and he just has to say like normal meal, smaller than usual, larger than usual. And he'll and end up with a reasonable A1C.
I wish to God, I wish that we could go back in time and have that for him,
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you, Michelle. I did it finally. I looked up, Melissa, I finally looked up at the screen where the word was and just said what I saw in front of me. Melissa, I'll share with you, and I'm sure you've listened and you've heard, like, I have that struggle about my friend Mike, who passed away. It's been a number of years now, right? But he was diagnosed when we were just out of high school, like right at the end of high school, And now I look back and I hear all these people's stories and I see what happened to him. Regular and MPH, nobody ever transitioned him off of it. He wasn't testing. They didn't take it very seriously. If he was standing up, he was okay. And, and then one day in his 40s, somebody finally figures out he's not all right. They try to put him on MDI. Nobody tells him what to do. He's having seizures. He's crashing his car. He doesn't all the terrible stuff that comes with it. He falls out of bed having a seizure one time, breaks a limb, and then one day somebody tells him, hey man, your kidneys are shot. And now he's on dialysis. And then, a couple of years later on dialysis, and he has a heart attack and he's gone. Right.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I feel like with diabetes is like, even if you're not doing that great, if you're doing something, like if you are like just trying, you'll do like pretty well.
But he was trying.
That's what I find.
He was just doing the things that he was told, and those things were not valuable.
Right.
And he never pivoted to new technology or new ideas. And maybe that's because he wasn't interested, or maybe it's because doctors didn't help. Like, I don't know what the reasons were, but I know that by the time Arden was diagnosed and I got this figured out, and I went to him and I said, Mike, I can help. Like, I really feel like, let's get you a CGM. Like, I think that's a great place to start, and he was just very resistant.
Yeah.
The truth is that by that time he came off to me like the adults that I see who want to argue with people online.
Yeah.
Like, this is harder than you think, like I have a person in mind right now who's in the group who, I mean, if you wanted my, again, 1,000-yard impression of this adult, like, they're in their own way. They've decided that this thing's going to kill them, and any help that anybody tries to put their way, like, that won't work. I've tried that, blah, blah, blah. Like, always resistant. That's how Mike was.
I mean, I'm like that. I can be like that. So I totally get it. I mean, that's how I feel like I was being about switching to a pump for so long. I get it because I'm a stubborn person. I feel for them for sure.
Me too.
But I mean, the best tool that you can be given as a diabetic, and hopefully you'll get it when you're a child, is a feeling of autonomy, a feeling that you can do this, like that you are capable of taking care of this. And if you work at it, you'll get better at it.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's true. Yeah. And you might be right about the other thing. Maybe Mike just didn't feel confident. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe the person you knew just didn't think they could do it. Maybe they've been through enough where they were just like, this isn't going to work no matter what anybody does. And then it becomes a psychological issue. It becomes a human thing, and you just can't get past it. But from my perspective, all I can tell you is that if you have your settings right and you understand how to bolus for the food you eat, you're very likely going to have reasonable outcomes day to day.
Right.
And that's why I'm making this podcast, is to get people to like see that there's just some pretty basic things you can do. Make sure your tools are sharp, and then make sure you're using the screwdriver on the screws and the hammer on the nails, like that kind of stuff. You have experiences and you learn as you grow. And before you know it, it's 6 months later and you're doing it. I just got a really great note today from an adult. Just very simple. Like, I'm going to share it with you because, I'll keep it vague, obviously, but I featured it in the group today. It's an adult who posts and says 93% in range, 3% low, MDI. I have a history of terrible A1Cs, complicated variables from chronic illnesses, I've been working on one thing a month. This month, I worked on candy. I'm 50 years old, and now I can actually eat candy. She says, thank you, Scott. My diabetes team will be thrilled with this, and shares a chart. 93% in range.
That's amazing.
3% low, 3% high, 1% very high. Like, my God, like, and this is a person probably in Europe or Canada, 3.9 to 10 is their range. And just amazing, like really amazing. But the overall like takeaway from this post is, hey, I found this podcast and look where I'm at now versus where I used to be.
Yeah.
I see that. And I said, though, there's an adult who was able to, whatever their crap was, they were able to put it aside and say, I'm going to try this new idea. And that's just kind of what I hope.
It's really hard to get people to listen to a podcast, though. That's the only trouble.
I'm doing it. A lot of people listen, but it's not enough. It is hard to get more. Like, I'm not going to lie to you.
People who listen to podcasts will listen to a podcast, and people who don't will not. It's just.
I've drug a lot of people into it. There's plenty of people that listen to this podcast, and they don't have another audio interest in the world.
I love that. That's great. I love to hear that.
I drag a lot of people into
recommend your podcast to people all the time.
Oh.
And even though, to a large extent, what I mostly find the podcast to be is validating about a lot of my experiences, because I feel, I hate like buzzwords like this, but I sometimes feel like gaslit by the doctors. I have just struggled so much with doctors, and I find that the doctors feel like this is an anti-doctor podcast. And I don't really think that's necessarily the case, but my doctor thought I was condescending to her. And I'm like, I probably was being condescending to her because in my opinion, I know better than her because I've been doing this longer and I don't think her advice is good. So a large extent, I find it just extremely validating. But I find that although I did listen to all the Bold Beginnings and the expert ones, all that, I did listen to all that.
But you didn't need that.
I knew all that stuff though.
Right. Yeah. That happens.
What I find really helpful is just when every once in a while, a guest will say something where I'm like, oh, wait a second, let me try that.
I never thought of that.
Especially when it comes to like specific, I forget what it was. It was a mom of a young child, and she said something about Tandem, and I wish I could remember what it was now. But whatever it was, I changed because of just this thing she said, and I was like, holy crap. I think it was about an extended bolus and like doing an extended bolus a certain way for something. And now I just do it as second nature and I don't even think about what it was.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
I learned that from her, and she was and that kind of stuff is just like so, I find it endlessly fascinating just to hear people's stories about living with diabetes.
Me too.
Because I could literally talk about it all day. And like when I meet a diabetic in the wild, I'm just like, let's talk about it,
I feel exactly the same way. I'm very happy that you had that experience and you continue to have that experience because, the first time it was said to me, I've said it on the podcast before, but I was surprised the first time when a person said to me like, oh, I love this podcast. If I don't listen to it, my blood sugars get out of whack and, and all this other stuff. And then I kind of just like, I did the thing. I leaned into like, oh, was it the pro tip series? Like I was trying to like just fish for like, so they could explain what helped them. And they said the same thing you said. No, I've heard those. They're good. I knew all that already. And I said, what do you get out of this? And she said, I don't even really know. Maybe accountability to myself. Like, and so now I've heard people say accountability. I've heard them say community. I've heard them say, hey, once in a while, somebody says something like you just said, like, oh, I never thought of that before. I don't even care anymore.
People are so full of good ideas. And I hate the internet. I hate Facebook and I hate how people want to. And I feel like sometimes I'll say something really mild and people will react really strongly. And then I get this bad feeling in me. And I'm like, why am I on this platform? You just gave me a bad feeling.
Let me tell you what I told somebody the other night. They asked me, they said, how are you so the way you are online where you don't fight with people? And even when they're being crappy, you're not crappy back and all this stuff. And I said what I said. But overall, I just always assume that if we're arguing, we're misunderstanding each other. Because I've met a lot of people and people don't argue like that in person. And, and it's fun to say like, oh yeah, sure. Cause they're keyboard warriors. I'm like, I don't even know that that's it. Like maybe they're just taking you out of context or incorrectly, or maybe you're not saying something in a way. I think that
there's something about being on the internet that just like makes you forget that like the person is a human and like a complicated human. And it just,
yeah. Very well could be.
It sort of frees up your darker side to come out.
I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying the rest of it is that if we got together in a room and you heard me, you might go, oh, that's not what I thought they were saying. And then you wouldn't say the crappy thing back that you said. And then I wouldn't say the crappy thing that, back to you. And then we wouldn't be fighting. We'd actually realize we get along pretty much. I think the whole world's screwed that way.
I agree. Yeah, it definitely isn't just like a diabetes thing.
No, it's not a diabetes thing.
It's far from it. I mean, comparatively, diabetes groups get along pretty well.
Melissa, I had this experience in the last year and a half where I'll just go through this very quickly, but my family bought me a chameleon and it was a surprise gift, and I didn't really know what I was doing with it. And I did know enough to know that they're very delicate, and if I do something wrong, it's not going to be alive very long. And I needed to figure out very quickly what to do. And then one day I thought, well, there must be someone out there doing for chameleon care what I do about diabetes. I'll go find that person. And I found a number of them, and I honed it down to one or two people, found this guy running a niche but large community for chameleon keepers. And I dove in, took his information, put it into practice. Just like that, I had a chameleon A1C in the fives. And I was like, oh, awesome. And I was kind of done. I was like, all right, I don't really need this anymore. But I hung in for a while, and I kept watching. And then I realized that every hardship he has running his chameleon community is exactly the same hardships I have running a diabetes community. And I was like, oh, this has nothing to do with diabetes or chameleons, or it's just people.
Right. People are the worst.
No, it's a limitation of discussing things in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge part of it. I mean, this is gonna sound pretty hippy dippy, but I feel like there's like a spiritual sickness that's sort of come down on us as a society that makes us feel less connected.
I just think we're all misunderstanding each other just enough to fight. That's it. Because I know people.
There are also some pretty fundamental differences.
Oh, well, sure. There's always going to be but still, I grew up, my parents had friends who had completely different political views and fundamentally different political views. I never once heard them fight about it or argue about it. They didn't talk about each other behind their backs, nothing.
There are some people in particular who are very invested in sowing such divides and turning them really, sometimes violent. And, I find that very concerning.
I would tell you that what I see is that it's always been a business to divide people, right? Because you divide them, you put them on your team, now you're on their team, et cetera. It's a tale as old as time, but it's so much easier digitally. And I agree with you. There are people who are I'll just say a thing to get everybody fighting. And then I think people do it with eating online.
Yeah.
I think they'll come on and they'll start a fight about whatever to draw attention to it so that the other people who would be mad at it go, oh, look, I found an ally and I know who to hate. This is awesome. And then the people who think they're an ally will go over there and then they build up their Facebook group or their coaching service or whatever it is they're trying to pump up. Right. And I just have an opposite opinion of it. I'm I think we can all get along and still do what we need to do and share with each other. And I don't need to steal you from someone. If you want to go to another Facebook group out of my Facebook, you should go.
Yeah.
In the beginning, people were hey, they posted another thing in there. I'm that's fine. If that helps them, then that's awesome. Now, if it's their group and they're pimping it, that's not okay.
Yeah.
But if it's a thing that they feel helped by, then they should share it. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to keep people geofenced.
Yeah.
And in my space, I think I hope they go out and find whatever it is that's best for them.
Well, I find it very fascinating, people's desire to, I understand why vegans have a desire to get other people to go vegan, because a lot of vegans are concerned about animal welfare and about, the environment and that sort of thing. And so I guess I can understand their need. For me, I feel like you can't influence people in that way. And so there's no point in trying. I don't have anything that makes me be I need to. I actually don't even want people to know that I'm vegan usually. I'd rather just do it silently.
I agree with you. I sort of believe that what happens is that people feel saved. Right. Then once they feel saved, they want to share it.
Yeah.
Then when they share it with you and you don't want to be saved, then they're mad at you for not wanting to be saved.
So I do find low carb people will sometimes get super, it feels like they're super invested in this diet in a way that I think it's great to eat fruit and vegetables, and have healthy food, I mean, and I don't feel like that's like, I don't know, a super big deal. And it also like doesn't bother me if you don't eat that way. Like I'm not, if I was bothered by that, I would be constantly bothered. You know, I would live a life of just being bothered.
I don't think of it as low carb people. I think of it as there are some people that eat a low carb lifestyle who they proselytize about it. And I can't guess why. Like I could guess why, but like it's not up to me to figure it out.
I don't understand why they're proselytizing about it, because I do understand why vegans do it. I don't agree with it, but I understand why they do it. But what are they getting?
It doesn't matter to me if you understand it. What I'm going to tell you is like, I don't think there are as many of them as you think. I think it's always fringes of fringes. I would never say low carb people, because I believe that probably 98% of the low carb people I've met are lovely, just like 98%.
And just being quiet about it. Yeah. Just doing what works for them.
Yeah. And then there's 2% of them that feel like, and I've had people explain this to me right from that perspective. I thought this thing saved my kid's life. When I tried to share it with somebody and they disagreed with me, it made me feel like they didn't care about their kid's life. And then that upset me. And then later I realized there was more than one way to skin this cat. And I was just unaware.
First, the vegans would say more than one way to peel a potato.
I was unaware of what that was.
I just came up with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought you made that up. They say like, look, I just thought that the thing that I knew was the only thing. It turns out it's not. But back then when I thought it was, oh my gosh, I thought those people must be monsters for doing this to their children.
Right.
Again, I don't think, except for the people who are trying to make business out of it, I don't think people are being shitty on purpose almost ever.
I agree.
Yeah.
What bothers me, I guess, I mean, it doesn't even bother me that much. I don't want to sound overly bothered, because I'm not. I don't appreciate it when anybody like acts like there's just one way to do things. Like for me, I mean, I did try the low carb thing. I was very unhappy eating that way because I love carbs. And also, like, I don't know if this is just something that was like handed to me by the schools or something, but in my head, like fruit is healthy to eat. Like that's like how I was raised. I was like, it's like you eat like, you know, fruits and vegetables. And like, I'm not going to stop eating like what to me sounds like some of the most healthy foods and also like my favorite foods. I'm not going to just like stop eating them because of the carb content. And I did try to do that though. And that's just not for me. I also like, it doesn't feel like it satisfies my hunger.
Yeah. It's not right for you. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, and also again, I was using so much more insulin when I ate that way. It was like, I guess it made my insulin resistance really high to like I was eating like a lot of meat and cheese and just like fatty foods, I guess. And what I find actually like, so there are studies about this, like about postprandial blood sugars or after meal blood sugars. If I eat just one high fat meal, just one, then even then my insulin resistance will go up just during that meal, which I think we all know that. We know that like fat does that. It causes that to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't work for you. I'm also sure that somebody who eats low carb would say, "Oh, you're doing it wrong." You know what I mean? Like, who know? And that's all well and good. Like, I think I genuinely don't care how people eat.
I mean, this was the other thing is that I'm never gonna be somebody who can just stick to one thing. Like, you can't tell me like you can never eat a banana again. You know, like, and like that's how
it's not for you.
When people tell you to eat low carb, I'm like that would work great if you are good at eating low carb and like not eating carbs. Then eating low carb works like exceedingly well for blood sugar control. But the problem is that your insulin resistance becomes very high. And so if you do like eat a banana one time, it's going to take like 5 units of insulin or more. I don't know how much insulin, but for me, you know, like a banana is less than a unit of insulin because my insulin resistance is very low because I'm eating very low fat.
Was that resistance, or is it just that your settings are way dialed back now from low carb and then you go to do something and your basal's low?
Well, I'm not on low carb.
But you know what I mean? Like if somebody was very low carb and then all of a sudden went to a banana, I would think that their settings wouldn't be set up to handle that.
To a large extent, I think that I still have like an MDI state of mind. So I'm just talking about how much insulin you would give yourself to treat something.
Yeah, you're calling it resistance. I just think that you'd need more insulin, but I don't know that that's resistance. I think
if you ate a certain way, let's say you ate very low fat and then you ate a banana and it would only take 1 unit of insulin. But if you ate very low carb, you might eat a banana. That same person, it might take them 5 units of insulin or whatever. I'm just making up numbers. But it indicates an inability for insulin to take care of carbohydrates and glucose as well as it used to. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad way to eat. Because if you're somebody who doesn't have to eat carbohydrates, like to feel good or whatever, then low carb is like amazing for your blood sugars. Like amazing. Like if you're somebody who doesn't want to think about dosing or just finds they're unable to think about dosing, then low carb is like incredible.
I think it's a very reasonable way to manage if you have type 1 diabetes, for sure.
For sure.
You were awesome. You really were. Thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being in the group and sharing your perspectives. And
all right. It was great talking to you.
Can you hold on 1 second for me? The episode you just enjoyed was sponsored by the twiist AID system powered by Tidepool. If you want a commercially available insulin pump with twiist lube that offers unmatched personalization and precision for peace of mind, you want twiist. twiist.com/juicebox. Having an easy-to-use and accurate blood glucose meter is just one click away. contournext.com/juicebox. That's right, today's episode is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Arden has been getting her diabetes supplies from US Med for 3 years. You can as well. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. My thanks to US Med for sponsoring this episode and for being longtime sponsors of the Juicebox Podcast. There are links in the show notes and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and all of the sponsors. Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate your loyalty and listenership. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. wrongwayrecording.com.